Look at these MPs voting. Those are Conservative MPs. Can you recognize some of them? From places like Ontario and Quebec, sure, but also from places like BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan. They're all standing and voting for a motion sponsored by a Liberal MP named Bardish Chagger. And let me read you the text of the motion. Here's a hint. The motion, as you saw on the screen there, was called Paris Agreement. Ready? In the opinion of the House, climate change is a global problem that requires a global solution, and that despite the withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement, Canada remains committed to the implementation of the agreement as it is in the best interests of all Canadians, unquote. And those were Conservatives standing up to vote for that motion. Only a single Conservative MP, the always reliable Cheryl Gallant from Ontario, refused to vote for this and voted against it. No one else in the Conservative Party voted against it. Why did the rest of them vote against every single thing the Conservative Party and those very MPs themselves had ever said and done on this issue? Why did Andrew Scheer, the new leader, allow this? Many of these MPs were in the government when Stephen Harper officially quit the Kyoto Protocol. Almost every one of these MPs has railed against the meaning and the effect of the Paris Agreement that is a successor agreement to the Kyoto Protocol. The Paris Agreement is named after a luxurious UN conference held in Paris about 18 months ago, where bureaucrats and diplomats and lawyers partied on taxpayers' money and said that oil was evil and we need carbon taxes and cap and trade and other centrally planned mechanisms to stop oil and gas. Fully 383 Canadians went to that conference. It was an orgy of excess, but it ended with a declaration that you have to live smaller, colder, darker. How can they support this motion? Look at the words again. It's clearly a slap at the United States. Why are Conservatives bad-mouthing the United States? Canadian Conservatives don't need to cheer for Donald Trump. That's not their job, though he's the only one who seems to be getting pipelines built to the oil patch. And in his announcement that he's pulling the U.S. out of this UN scam, he's done more for the Canada's oil and gas industry than anyone else in this country other than Brad Wall. So fine, you don't have to cheer for Donald Trump, but to vote for a motion clearly designed and timed to embarrass Donald Trump. Why are you doing that if you're a Conservative? Did you get the global solution part of the motion? Funny, I thought Trudeau had promised Brad Wall that it would be a made-in-Canada solution, not that a carbon tax is a solution to anything. It's really just another way of saying the UN will have the solution for Canada, which is another way of saying countries like China and France and Russia will make the decisions for us, but really unaccountable bureaucrats and lawyers and diplomats will make the decisions. Since when do Conservative MPs think their constituents are better represented by UN bureaucrats than by MPs? And is it really the view of Conservative MPs that they truly remain committed to the UN plan now that our chief trading partner, our chief customer, our chief competitor is pulling out of that same economic straitjacket? And they are saying yes to drilling and fracking and digging coal and saying no to carbon taxes. Is it really your view, Conservative MPs, that this agreement is still a good idea, if it ever was? You Conservative MPs, you never thought it was a good idea, even when Barack Obama himself had America committed to the Paris Agreement. But now, after Donald Trump pulls out, you suddenly do think this agreement's a good idea? I don't believe you. I'm sorry, only a crazy person would think that. Or Michael Chong. And I forgive Michael Chong in this one instance for voting for this. At least he campaigned in the leadership race on this. At least he was honest about his views on a carbon tax. Let the man speak from his heart. He has not hidden his colors. But Andrew Scheer, the man who pitched himself as a true conservative, a conservative's conservative, the man who comes from the province of Saskatchewan, where Brad Wall is the only Canadian still fighting against this global warming scam. Andrew Scheer not only supported this motion himself, but he ordered everyone in the party to do so on pain of being disciplined. That last line in the motion, that it is in the best interests of all Canadians, really, of all Canadians. Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives think that the Paris Agreement on global warming is in the best interest of all Canadians, of oil and gas companies, really? Of families on a budget, really? Of Canadians in resource-producing regions, really? Does Andrew Scheer actually believe this? If so, he's a damned liar who lied his way into office. Or he is not a liar, he is merely a cad, a trickster, who thought this was some clever scheme for whatever reason. What, to appease the Liberals? To appease the media? What possible angle is there here? This was a symbolic vote. It had no meaning other than as a symbol. And that makes it worse. As in, this was 100% about corrupting the principles of the Conservative Party. It wasn't a tangible vote. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a real decision to govern the country. It was basically a Liberal Party press release that Andrew Scheer made his MPs stand and agree to. The Liberals used it as a slap in the face to Donald Trump, of course, a slap in the face to Brad Wall, of course, a slap in the face to the oil industry, of course, but mainly a slap in the face of any conservatives or any global warming skeptics or any carbon tax skeptics or any United Nations skeptics. And for Andrew Scheer to not only sign on to that personally for himself, but to force his party to do so on pain of discipline, that is a disgrace. I put it to you that as a leadership candidate, had Andrew Scheer disclosed that he would go on to do this, he would not have won the leadership. Do you doubt it? The only Conservative MP worth that title today is Cheryl Gallant. There were a few timid abstainers, Conservative MPs, who lacked the courage to vote against this motion, didn't vote for it, sat in their seats. Cheryl Gallant voted against it. But for those who cowardly sat in their seats, neither for or against, well, Dante wrote in the Inferno that there is a special place in hell for people who, in a time of good and evil, stay neutral. What cowards they were. And for what? And for what? What was the political calculus here? Did this suddenly engender a strange new respect for Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives from the media, from the CBC, from environmental extremist groups? Of course not. It just gave them a free victory, a perpetual talking point until the end of time, where the supporters of the UN's global warming schemes can now say with all honesty that the Conservatives do indeed support it too. There is no upside in terms of the issues or the national debate for doing this. So why did Conservative MPs buckle under Scheer's demands? How can you represent the oil patch? How can you represent Fort McMurray, Edmonton, Calgary, anywhere in Saskatchewan, the interior BC? How can you do that and obey this order? What did Scheer threaten to do to them? I know that cabinet ministers are under the thumb of the prime minister. He could threaten to sack a cabinet minister for any reason, and they would lose their perks and their power and their reputation. But these are backbench conservatives in opposition, even frontbench conservatives in opposition, key critics for various files. So what? So Andrew Scheer would threaten to demote you as deputy critic of amateur sport or whatever? What a joke. And you value that little bauble, that trinket so highly that you sell your soul. Oh, who cares about your soul? You're just a politician. You sold out your constituents' souls. I told you my worries about Andrew Scheer before. I showed you in my interview with him last year about immigration that he dodged and bobbed and weaved. He wouldn't let himself be pinned down on the simplest questions. He evaded making a principled answer. I wrote that off to lack of experience. I thought, because as a speaker for the House of Commons for nearly a decade, well, he really wasn't built for fighting. He wasn't built for debating. Well, he's still that way. He either panicked at the thought of a fight over global warming, or he never really believed what he had said he believed for years about oil and gas and carbon taxes and even his home province of Saskatchewan. Look, I know it's tough being conservative in Canada. I have more battle scars than most. But the Liberals and their media will always say bad things about you as a conservative, no matter what you do. That should not be painful to anyone in politics. If it is, don't go into politics. It should not be painful to anyone unless you've spent 10 years as a coddled, insulated Speaker of the House who's never fought a fight. This is worse than being attacked by Liberals. This is worse than losing a fight to Liberals. This is corrupting yourself. It was always the Soviet psychological tactic against dissidents, to make them compromise themselves, to make them turn in someone else on their team, to inform on someone else, to make dissidents break their own values. It wasn't substantively important, but it was enormously psychologically important, for never again could those dissidents be motivated by idealism and high principle as they had been before, for they knew in their heart that they had chosen chosen to betray their cause or their friends simply to buy themselves a momentary respite. That is what happened here. Causing your enemy to betray himself, even a small bit, is a much greater victory for the Liberals than defeating him yourself. The Liberals didn't beat Conservatives down yesterday. Andrew Scheer did. He betrayed every Conservative in the country except for Michael Chong. Consider me a non-fan of Andrew Scheer and the Conservative Party and all of its politicians except Cheryl Gallant, which is fine. We're not a political party over here. We're journalist advocates, loyal to our consciences and our own viewers, and we will rise to the occasion, as I told you we would during the Conservative leadership, to make sure the Conservative Party stays conservative and that our viewers' interests are served. Andrew Scheer thinks he can make friends out of his enemies by making enemies out of his friends. He thinks that by betraying the oil and gas industry and mining and trucking and shipping and pipelines and every family struggling to pay a carbon tax, he thinks that will buy him a respite from the eco-extremists and the media and the Liberals, like Patrick Brown, the coward of the Ontario PCs, has done by committing his party the carbon tax in Ontario. Because after all, I suppose, where's an Alberta Conservative going to go? Where's a Saskatchewan Conservative going to go? They have to vote Conservative, right? I mean, they'd never vote Liberal, right? Andrew Scheer has them locked up, right? So now he's wooing, what, Toronto millennials, taking gender studies or something. Yeah, no. There is some other place for true Conservatives to go, and that is to go home, to stay home, not to volunteer for Andrew Scheer, not to donate to his party. You can't cut off Scheer or the MPs. They're on the public dole, the taxpayer teat, until 2019. But you can cut off the Conservative Party when they call you and mail you and email you for their fundraising. But you know what? We will fill the void. We here at the Rebel have already been filling the void. We were the ones who had that massive rally at the Edmonton legislature against Rachel Notley's carbon tax. Look at that. Nearly 3,000 unemployed men and women calling for a stop to the carbon tax that came from this UN global warming garbage. That was us. It wasn't the Conservative Party that hosted that rally. That was us. Andrew Scheer was not there. And we did it a week later, the next week in Calgary too. More than 1,000 people came out to a meeting in the freezing cold weather. It wasn't the Conservative Party of Canada that had lawn signs against the carbon tax. That was us at the Rebel and our grassroots volunteers that distributed them throughout Alberta and to some parts of Ontario too. And my point is this. All the great Conservatives in this caucus, the Garnet Genuises, the Great Hope, Shannon Stubbs, principled woman, Dave Yurtiga, MP from Fort McMurray, new MPs like Stephanie Cusey from Calgary, where the hell were they? Why were they such cowards? Well, I don't care that they were cowards. I care about the fact that they stabbed their own people in the back for Andrew Scheer. I know we've had a lot of petitions these days, but this one is important. It is a pledge, more than a petition. It is for Conservative Party members who are shocked and surprised and betrayed by this fundamental breach, who never would have supported Andrew Scheer had they known what a betrayer he would be, who never would have volunteered or donated to their sheep-like MPs, people who are appalled that the party has become auto-washed in the verbiage of Preston Manning, who surely now supports this too. The pledge that I ask you to sign is simple. Do not give them any more of your money. Do not give them any more of your volunteer time. Just don't. If you want to fight against the UN's global warming scheme, well, do it with us. We'll pick up the slack, and we'll keep holding Andrew Scheer and his cowardly MPs to account until they become true Conservatives again. So please sign our petition, which actually is in the form of a pledge to this effect. No more money for the Conservatives. No more volunteering for them. Not while they're just second-rate Liberals. Go to backstabbers.ca. Backstabbers.ca to sign the petition. That's a rough name for a petition. But can you really tell me I'm wrong? Hey, if you like that, sign up for my show every day. Click on the screen to subscribe.